Yeah, it's an integral part of the infrastructure of New Zealand. You cannot have cables just hanging off the wall or off the ceiling. What it is a product that is always required, and even in a time of recession, there's always going to be a requirement for power and infrastructure and data and communications.
Welcome to a Kiwi Original. This is episode 22, and on today's show, I'm joined by Hayden Froggatt, who is the Managing Director for Mechanical Support Systems. This is a company that does the solutions that actually you probably don't want to see. It's things like cable containment, bespoke fabrication. If it's on show, it better look good. And that's why companies like Datacom, Sistema, Rocket Lab, AUT are some of the favorites that choose mechanical support systems. So we're going to be talking about what the business does, why it is in operation, and some of the insights that they've seen over the last 6 to 12 months as business has shifted, particularly with COVID-19. So, first of all, Hayden, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great to still virtually be here.
Yeah, great to virtually be here. First time I've been interviewed online, to be fair, which is
it's
first for everything. Kind of feels like
fair
a job interview.
Well, it all looks good from here. I can see you're a Vodafone Warriors fan. How tough has it been not being able to watch the sport over the last few weeks?
Yeah, it has been actually, and we've supported them for probably the last 7 or 8 years. So it has been really tough because it's become an integral part of our marketing and sales with the corporate side of the Warriors as well. So I'm actually missing the interaction with our customers that we would have been having now with the home games with the Warriors. So and like you say, I mean, there's not even sport on TV to fall back on. So it's been probably one of the more depressing parts about the last 6 to 8 weeks.
So you've not been able to, it's not only not going to the games, it's not being able to take your clients to get a bead on projects or what's coming up, problems.
Yeah, it's been a really good thing for us over this time period, using the Warriors as an interaction for our key customers in a very relaxed environment where things flow quite easily and obviously you can make some really strong relationships. So that's obviously not happening this year. We're still supporting the Warriors as far as financially, leaving our money invested with them to carry over into next year. So we'll just have to watch them in Australia and hope that their season turns around a little bit, hopefully. It's
so
hard being a Warriors supporter, to be fair.
I was going to say, I wasn't going to bring that up. I was going to say that how do you then keep those client relationships going when we're all under lockdown, which we've just come out of? If people are listening, this is the first day of level 2. What have you been doing to keep in touch, and how's that changed the nature of the relationships?
Look, we've got a lot of long-term relationships, and I suppose over this period, technology has changed, and we've started using Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and the good old traditional pick up the phone and just have a chat kind of thing is, that's very prevalent in my day now. I used to obviously go out and see these guys quite a bit in their offices. That's a lot more difficult now. While we've relaxed to level 2, it's still going to be a difficult thing, I feel, for the next 2 to 3 months. So it's very much just a technology-based thing at the moment. Trying to stay in touch via phone or online kind of thing.
And what are some of the projects or the work that you would usually engage with clients? So for someone listening that's brand new to mechanical support system, what is the service offering?
So probably our unique service offering over other suppliers in the space. And to be fair, the space is quite niche in New Zealand. There's really only 3 genuine players across the New Zealand market. Our point of difference has been that we can do a turnkey solution, and that we'll take a project, we'll design it, we'll engineer it, we'll supply it, and we'll install it. So with a focus on seismic as well, because obviously post Christchurch, that's been a really, really big thing in the construction landscape.
And in terms of the built environment, when you bring that to life, what are the building blocks of that?
So the building blocks of how the project comes together, you mean?
Yeah, like what are the things that when you're installing it, what's your team actually putting in?
Oh, okay, so the core business of the company is to supply and install reticulation systems, which are basically like the support for the cables that will run through commercial buildings, hospitals, wastewater treatment plants, warehousing, a little bit of high-end housing when you're getting into that multi-million-dollar type space. Wherever you've got a lot of power, data, communications type cabling, it needs to be supported in a space generally above the ceiling. And like you alluded to earlier, a lot of our stuff is not readily seen if you were to look for it in the public space. But in saying that, you go to a supermarket basement car park and look up, and you'll see a lot of our product flying around. If you weren't in the industry, you wouldn't look for it, but if you're in the industry, you see it all the time, I suppose.
So it's being installed after roof's gone in, so you've got a covered environment, but
Correct.
The Sparky hasn't done any of his work because he's got nothing to lay it out on yet. So
Correct.
You're that key point that allows services to start to flow, Sparkies to come in, aircon, HVAC, all of those services then flow after you've basically laid the internal roading for the cables.
That's probably a fair way of looking at it. It is like an internal road, and not just with the electrical cables. Our support systems will also carry piping, ductwork, which is air conditioning. So all of your hydraulics, which is your sanitary, your fire, all of that type of thing is utilised on our system.
So it's really all the arteries for the building. If something
Correct.
goes wrong, then that tray that you're putting in is probably the first point of contact to see are the cables all in place. Do you have to? What are the requirements on you in terms of safety and splitting up cables so there's no interference between particular types of cables, that in earthquakes certain cables or ducting doesn't come loose? Like, how do you juggle? Because buildings aren't like the 1960s anymore. You've got Cat 6E, you've got all these different things.
Yeah, it's quite complicated. It can be. To be fair, pathways are pre-designed by electrical consultants, and when you talk about separation, there will be separate containment for data and power, and they'll have a separation of 300 to 500 mil between them, so that there's no interference. I mean, we have challenges with the space that we're running through. A lot of the time is very tight, and a lot of challenges with interference from other trades that end up in our space as well. But what has been occurring in New Zealand over the last 5 years is a fairly large uptake on building information management software, which is BIM. So that is essentially a model is produced before construction that is 3D, and you can fly through it, and you can actually start to point out where clashes are happening and almost build the clashes out before construction on site.
That's interesting. So you can actually virtualize where different trades are going to get upset with each other weeks or months ahead before anyone's even arrived on site.
Yeah, and that's in the perfect world, that's how it's supposed to work. New Zealand's very infant still in its use of BIM. Overseas in the UK and the like, it's actually government mandated that BIM must be used on government projects over a certain value. So their skill level and their uptake across even Europe is a lot more advanced than New Zealand's. But again, when you talked earlier, or we talked off camera about AI and automation, and this is the future of construction, being able to almost to the point where it will become virtual reality. And there is even a small amount of that going on over here, where you can put on a virtual reality headset and stand in an empty space and look at everything basically in place, which is quite a cool thing.
How much of that becomes, like that's the kind of spacey widget, but it's not really practical, versus like my brother's got a company in the UK called Rapid Tender, and he's an ex-Sparky who's now in technology. And he's worked out a way where you put in all the plans for a 20, 50 or 80 story building, and it'll tell you what the estimation is exactly, because he used to be an estimator after being a Sparky.
Yep.
And he found it was a whole lot of time and effort. So with his mate, he's built an algorithm that does all that. So when they're putting in the bid, it's an exact number and it's an exact cost with
that sounds awesome. Who's he? Because it is a huge cost, and it's a time-consuming thing. And there's a real risk attached to human estimation. Even myself, I've done it for 15 plus years, and I'm pretty good at it, but I still miss things. And then it can be that you're just having a bad day and you're tired and you miss a line, or you count wrong. Again, that sounds like great technology. And we've always been all about adopting technology in our business as well, and trying to do things different to our competitors. Our industry worldwide has really been around since the 40s, and the incumbent company that invented the systems hasn't really changed a lot over that time. And we've found in New Zealand that we've obviously got quite a unique view on things, and trying to advance systems and make systems more labour friendly, so there's less labour on site, and things are quicker. And it's not just about the cost of the material; it's about the material being able to save you time and cost on site as well. So
I think that's a really important point, I think, for anyone in construction and building, is that as manufacturers, we're really good within the manufacturing environment, because as soon as it's created, you want it out of there because it's taking up room, it's costing you money. Yeah. Whereas when something's made on site, it doesn't matter how long it takes, and that's where the budgets start to balloon, because if you can do as much before it gets on site, then you don't have to work around other people. You're not out in the rain necessarily. There's all these other benefits to it. Totally agree. And
obviously, we continue to take leads off the Europeans and overseas, because they're quite a bit more advanced than New Zealand in this space. And what is happening overseas a lot is modularisation. We see that there is a modularisation for our industry and services as well. And going back to exactly what you're saying, we run a very tightly controlled factory here, where we're ISO accredited, and everything is much simpler to control in the factory environment, right down to the skill level required for the people making the product. But when we get out on site, we come across so many different challenges that we can't control. So the whole idea behind it is to try and make as much of it here and then take it to site pre-made. So we're in the early stages of that, but that's again the focus for us going forward. And even times like this, with what's happening with COVID-19, I think it's even more prevalent to take things out of sight, to keep bodies away from site and keep it in a controlled environment where we can keep physical distancing, and just a process that can be followed. It's very important. Interesting space. And I've been reading a few things about modular and how this might be a catalyst for modular to really push out into the market across a lot of sectors.
I think it makes sense, because wherever we've put industrialization and productization, standardization, all of that stuff within four walls, you reduce errors, you increase consistency, and ultimately that increased productivity. And what I'd love to see is if organizations like yours and all the other construction and manufacturing did that, then you get the price of buildings down without having to reduce our standard of living collectively. So we're just doing things smarter. What do you, like at a broader level for manufacturing, for construction? Is there areas that are obvious in terms of waste that you would start, that you look at others and go, we would never do it that way? Like, are there things that you've already put in place that that help with this?
Yeah, we have, and I mean we've. I suppose you could say we're doing an early piece of modularisation. We do a lot of pre-cutting fabrication of our system in-house here. We then send it to site on pallets, like a standard 1,200 pallet, as opposed to sending it in a 6 metre length that it comes in. So again, we're reducing freight costs, reducing health and safety issues with cutting on site. And wastage is a big one. Again, when you talk about wastage, again, sending those products in their full lengths, there's a huge amount of waste that comes off, as an offcut. When again, in a factory environment, we reuse those offcuts for other projects, basically.
So the question then I was going to move on to is there was an announcement recently by Microsoft that they're going to open up and build a data center here. We know that data centers are power hungry, they're data hungry. Is that the type of projects that you look for within New Zealand?
We love data centers. As far as our product range, data centers per square meter would have the most cable containment in probably any project. Maybe outside of an oil rig, an oil manufacturing facility or something that might have multiple layers type thing. Data centers are the cream for us, basically. And unfortunately, we don't see enough of them down here. We've been involved in 3 since we've been going. And yeah, that was interesting news with Microsoft, because I believe if they can let them come in, I believe a few of the others will follow, like Google. Potentially, it could be seen as quite a nice safe haven for this type of thing.
I think you're right. I think historically, less so, because New Zealand's on the edge of the world, and it's just a slower ping time. I worked in telecoms in Europe for some time, and you can get
latency,
sub 100 milliseconds anywhere in Europe, whereas from here to the US or Europe, you're talking 100 or 150. But I think we're living in different times now. And that difference is, if your workforce can't easily get into work or don't want to go to work because of this virus, or can't fly or don't want to fly, and they're high value talent, if you can say to them, let's take you to a country that COVID-19 is eradicated in, we've already built a data center, or you can, there's shared data center there where you can manage some of it remotely, but you can, visit it for the rest. It's probably an opportunity for some of these big companies, particularly if they want to start getting into Australia or Asia as a marketplace.
Because we're a bit of a hub for back into China, really, aren't we?
I think so. And we're a developed economy. We're high trust. We've got open borders in terms of information flows. And we've got smart people. The whole telecoms here goes way back to the 90s with Telstra, Clear, Saturn, BT. We've got some really smart people who are all around the current Spark or Datacomms.
Yeah.
When you're selling into those types of businesses, who's the key contact? Who's the person that specs out the work on the data side?
Well, generally we sort of live in 2 spaces, mainly in a second tier in the electrical space for these bigger projects, where we'll be a subcontractor to the main electrical, who would be contracting to the builder. But there are cases where we will go direct to client as well, and direct to the tier 1 builders. It just very much depends on what the project is, and a lot of the time who's in charge and how they're running it. We have to be a little bit careful about obviously going above our key customers and going direct, because we tend to cut them out, and that's obviously not how we want to try and do business. So,
well, it's an ecosystem, isn't it? It's knowing where you sit within that.
Yeah, it is. And to be fair, it is quite a good ecosystem for us because we do get insulated too, especially in the construction sector, which can be a little bit fragile as far as builders at times. As you would have seen over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been some fairly large failures in the construction sector. Luckily, our tier one customers are all fairly robust entities and successful in their own right, so they would always pay us even if they were to have somebody fold above them, and we've had that a number of times. So
that's actually really important for a business because it doesn't.
I think so.
Given the scale of businesses that you're working with, when it comes to housing development, it only takes one bad development, you see developers go under. So that value you're getting from your buyer is significant.
I think so. And look, it's just part of the big picture of running a business and de-risking a very important part of it, which is the money flow. Because it only takes one or two decent sized contracts to fall over, and it can really turn the business upside down from a cash flow and equity point of view. It's always been a really big focus of mine, the financial side of it. Not that I'm a financial guru, and I've got people around me that are good at that, but just treating that money like it was my own, if you know what I mean, and making sure that we get it is very important, especially in times like this as well. We've had a real focus on bringing the cash in that was owed to us over the last 6 to 8 weeks, and at the same time passing that back out to the companies that we owed, because trying to keep the money go around.
Sorry to interrupt. This won't take long. Subscribe to the show and you'll never miss another one of these amazing episodes. Right, back to the show. That's so. I'm glad you said that because we're in exactly the same position. That if there's fees outstanding, let's get them in, or let's just write it off to bad debt. At least we know our position.
Yeah.
And then let's just pay early all the people we can't do without because they're part of our broader team that goes beyond the employees. And you never know where it might be just one individual that you're paying in 7 days instead of 20th of next month. That means it's his or her mortgage versus a bigger organization. It might be they're not going to do the redundancies now because the bean counters have gone, we're here, not there.
Yeah.
So it is quite important.
Yeah, and I think again in times like this, it's when that money wheel starts to grind to a halt that the things really start to get bad. People start sitting on their hands. I'm not paying you. You're not paying me, and that's when it really unravels, to be honest. And I think that's obviously part of the reason why the government's really trying to stimulate business at the moment as well. I feel, just to keep it flowing. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. I mean, even from our point of view, we've got a lot of project work that we took into lockdown, and we've come out the other side, and things have started to roll again, and that's great. And we're chasing a couple of very large infrastructure jobs, the government jobs, like the CRL rail link. But to get some surety going into that 6 to 12 month period into next year, because with the construction sector, there's actually quite a lag between conception, tender, construction. So while we're seeing jobs being cancelled now or deferred, we're not feeling it now. We'll be feeling it next year. So whereas the general economy might actually recover, the construction sector will actually start to dip. And that's how it happened in 2007 as well. We kind of rode for probably another year after that, and then there was just a big hole where the jobs just dried up, and there was no, it came eventually. We eventually hit the pothole.
In those times, it's it's important to then look after your people and invest in the ones that you can't do without.
Yes.
What is talk me through in like in normal times what would be the development program for employees? Like, how do you get good talent in? If someone's losing their job in the next 12 months, what do you need them to have in terms of skills and attitude before they come to you?
Yeah.
Because you might find that you're on the opposite end, is rather than looking for work in 6 to 12 months, all these data centers start turning up and you're at the opposite problem.
Yeah, you're quite right. And look, to be honest, we've got a very good business consultant that we've had in the background for 6 years that was given to us by the bank, or we were advised to use by the bank, and he's been really good. He's always taught us to plan for the worst, hope for the best. Deep down, I feel like we probably will be okay, but I feel that we need to plan that maybe in 6 months' time it might not be as good as we hope, and we're doing lots of cash flows and just looking at things on a monthly type basis to readjust. And saying that, what I have found over the last probably 5 years, and as far as staff and caliber, is we go the extra mile to pay above market to get the right person. We don't sort of fall into that trap of trying to fill a hole and trying to do it as cheap as possible. And that sort of really comes across the whole business, even in how we buy, and even how our customers buy from us. We're not the cheapest in the market, but the value you get from what you spend with us far exceeds the fact that you've had to spend a little bit more. And that's the same with the employee. You pay the right amount of money, you get the right amount of investment from the person. They treat it like it's their own business. And funny enough, you fly. And we actually went into the lockdown with probably the best team we've had in the entire time that I've been in business. Unfortunately, we've just lost one person, but that was her. She's gone to start her own business. So I'm sort of okay with that.
That's a good reason.
Yeah, that's a great reason. And she was, she had just been pushed out as a technical sales rep into the market, and she would have done great. But she's going to do her own thing right at the bottom. I like it, and that's kind of where we came from. So to answer your question, I almost feel like we attract talent now. We're mature enough in the market to start attracting people that want to work for us. It hasn't always been the case, and it takes time to get to that. And look, our culture is not perfect, but it's something that we consciously work on all the time.
I like the way you've just described that. You're deliberate about the caliber of person you want. And I think if someone's buying services from you as part of an overall spec of a job, it's really important, because if your team or any team at that point of the build gets it wrong, there's quite a big cost magnification effect, because you're slowing down the quite expensive people, the sparkies, the technicians, the engineers. You're not slowing down necessarily the builders or the plumbers. You're slowing down the half tech, half trade people.
Correct, and we fill the space for them in the installation of the containment by taking their high skilled leveled electricians off that work. So they put us into that space, and they expect us to keep them ahead of the game, and it's very important. And it also goes back to why everything we do is all about making the right team, from customer to supplier to employee. If everyone's got if it's the right mix, it works, and you make it work. And that's why we don't look to go to the bottom of the market. There's clients in our market that's all about price. That's all they want is they want the bottom dollar. So we generally don't chase them, and our clients don't chase that work either. So I feel like we're in a good space.
What's the importance of New Zealand made and New Zealand made manufacturing? Have you ever considered offshoring parts of it, or simplifying it?
Well, yeah, look, to give you some focus, when we first started, we were, to compete, we were importing product. The business develops and around that 6 to 7 year mark, we bought we took a plunge and we bought manufacturing equipment in house and started to produce as much product as we could ourselves with local bought raw materials such as steel, etc. And we've continued to do that. And I would think at the moment we are probably in that rounds of 80% New Zealand made. We still have components that we need to source from overseas because we don't have the in-house capability or to manufacture at scale and the right price point. But we're continually looking to invest that to change that because, to be fair, it has been pretty tough at times competing on that level with New Zealand made against products that are materially quite a bit cheaper out of China. But what we've found is that while in the short term we might lose somebody, they generally seem to filter back after they get let down. And that's
how are they let down? What are the problems that that client gets after they choose what they think is the best price, best solution? Quality
and out of specification, because I mean, in our industry, we're driven by specification. So our product range has technical parameters that must be met. This all flows through down to its ability to operate with load and under seismic conditions and the like. So and probably the other one is continuity of supply. So they'll obviously have a lot of product. They'll have a rush on it. The containers will be late. They'll be left in a hole. They've stopped dead on work sites because they don't have the materials. Then they have to go to somebody else and pay more. I suppose it's just all about getting a level of service that you can trust, and we've always got the products available. And I mean, we've got a pretty much a just-in-time system with our cable tray that we can produce. We can produce project lots of cable tray within three days out of our facility. And when I talk project lots, 3,000 meters type sort of quantity.
Wow.
So which is really starting to play into our hands in some ways with what's happening with COVID-19 at the moment. And we're really promoting the fact that we've got a really stable supply line, which is I hope will benefit us going forward, and it benefits the businesses that supply us as well.
In terms of who needs to hear this story from you as we kind of wrap up now, what are the people that you would want to listen into the mechanical support system story and hear about the differences of what you're manufacturing here locally and the benefits that go beyond price, actually beyond quality as well? It's that being able to know that not only you're employing Kiwis, but your job's going to get done on time and you're going to meet code.
Yes. I mean, obviously, our key target market is our peers in the construction space, the electrical, mechanical, fire, builders, specifiers, so your consultants. There's, the wholesale groups, the electrical wholesale groups, those type of entities. I mean, your general day-to-day mum and dad probably doesn't have a lot of interest in what we do because it's not a product that's domestically focused, but what it is a product that is always required, and even in a time of recession, there's always going to be a requirement for power and infrastructure and data and communications and that type of thing. So I would say they're probably the guys that we would want to hear the story.
And I think that's what I like about these chats is that it's not something that the average Kiwi on the street would even know about or think about. But after listening to this, they might then look up at the supermarket and go, those silver snake things that are around the building that aren't the big round silver things, they're probably full of cables of power and other...
Yeah, and people ask me what I've done and what I do over the years, and I sort of tell them, and I always sort of fall back to the same thing. it's not a romantic type product range. It doesn't. It probably doesn't give people warm and fuzzies. It gives me lots of warm and fuzzies because I know what it's doing in the background, and it's an integral part of the infrastructure of New Zealand. You cannot have cables just hanging off the wall or off the ceiling. It just doesn't work. It has to have this backbone that holds it up. And it's the same in every country in the world, or any developed country in the world. They use cable containment. Unfortunately, some of the second tier, third tier countries can't afford it. And you will go to the places like India where you will see cables just running down hallways on the floor. That type of thing.
I've seen it, and around Thailand, and you go, wow, this is a really different built environment here. And then you wonder, where's the cable trays? Like, where's but there's no standard, so they don't need them. Therefore, why would you put them in? Yeah,
no standard, and there's a budget this big, and then they get down to it, there's no money for containment. It's just not. And saying that, somewhere like India, you will find big government projects will have it, but a lot of medium to small projects will have nothing. But that's a developing country. I suppose looking to develop like China has.
Well, I think you may not think it's an exciting, sexy product, but going into a recession, which I think we're all about to go into, as we're in kind of mid-May, anything that brings cash in and keeps people employed is pretty sexy at the moment, because you're going to keep jobs going. And I think to do this type of work in the background and not seek the glamour of a lot of the the consumer-facing products actually gets you to a point where now, more than ever, Kiwis need businesses like yours.
Yeah, I think so. We'll continue. We might be a little bit, it might be shaped a little bit different, maybe for the good, for the better or the worse, but we'll survive because there is a need, and that need doesn't go away. Dependent on the highs and lows of the economy. It's just like anything, you just got to move with the change. It's funny, and just as a parting note, we went into this lockdown on the back of our best year ever last year. Even March has just rounded out the best year ever, and now we got locked in for 4 weeks, and the world's changed again. It's funny how it happens, I suppose.
Well done for that excellent year last year. And I think the thing you can be confident in is that any shift in business, this is an external shock. This is not an internal shock. No. This isn't because New Zealand has bad business practices. This is because we have great health practices and we weren't allowed to respond as business. We were shut down. Whereas now, level 2, it's back on. We can do it safely. Now the opportunity is to move fast and get back on top of businesses and actually build some great things together.
Like anything, there's always an opportunity, isn't there? And this is a reset, and there's opportunity. Just gotta.
There is indeed.
Yeah.
And let's hope the Warriors start playing soon.
Well, they'll start playing. They'll start playing. I don't know how well. To be fair.
Give us all something to watch.
Yeah, hey, it'll be something to watch. I think there's a game at the end of the month, to be fair. So I'll sit in front of the TV and watch it.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time, Hayden. I appreciate what you're doing with mechanical support systems and the broader impact you're having with jobs on New Zealand's economy.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, Ryan. It's been quite intriguing. I've never done one of these before. But
you're a natural. We could do them all the time.
I'm getting better on Zoom and stuff. So, yeah, thanks for
This has been a Kiwi original brought to you by the New Zealand Made team. Thanks for watching. The New Zealand Made trademark is used by over 1,200 businesses in New Zealand. The New Zealand Made team licenses that trademark. Check if you're eligible at bynz.org.nz. If you feel that someone should see this, share it with them now. Otherwise, subscribe to youtube.com/bynzmade. We'll see you on the next episode.